All right, it is 4 p.m., February 17, 2026, and I'm going to call the City of Iowa City Work Session to order. All right, we're going to move on to item number 1, which is the University of Iowa Student Government Updates. And also want to say hello to everyone and welcome to your City Hall. Welcome.
Hi. I just want to say it was great to see everyone last week at Town Hall. I know we really enjoyed it. It's always great to connect our senators with the city and see what we do. I know that they have many ideas and many more questions, so we will be sending an additional sheet over to the correct people. Furthermore, recently some of our leadership attended the IMU Centennial Gala, where, as many of you probably know, that they're redoing the IMU to kind of expand it and make it more modernized. Part of that, USG and GPSG, our graduate professional student government, have donated a green space for the IMU, so a space for the students to go and also be connected with nature with outside lighting and environmental decorations. Furthermore, next Wednesday, we're going to be heading down to the state capitol for Caucus Day. There, we're going to advocate for students' rights and things that we want to see with our university. It'll be a great time to meet with legislative representatives and also talk with other student leaders. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And it was a joy to connect with all of you that night. All right, we're going to move on to clarification of agenda items. Item number 2.
Just to give you a heads up, Mayor, I am planning to recuse myself from the field house items, so I'll be asking to pull the one from the consent agenda, and then I'll, Conflicts Council has suggested I make a statement as well, so that's my plan.
All right,
and then I'll
great.
sit out the one on the formal.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else from the agenda? I guess I'll give a heads up that tonight we're going to do the State of the City, and we'll go ahead and open up with a roll call and just a point of order. I'll give a couple remarks, and then I'll signal and state when we'll go down and sit down below, and then the State of the City will happen, and then at the end I'll let every counselor know when we're returning up, and that is the same thing for staff. And the counselors, we have spaces for you on the front row. I'm assuming it's on this side.
Both sides.
Both sides. Yes. All right. So I think if it's 7 over there, we'll have council sit over there.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there. And then the front row is for my family. All right. Great. Thanks. Anything else from the agenda? We're going to move on to item number 3, which is our information packets. We'll start with February 5th. We will move on to February 12th.
I had one, IP 5, the temporary use of right-of-way agreement termination. I just wanted to give a thanks to staff for probably for doing a really good job of engaging in probably maybe difficult conversations with the university and doing so in a way that maintains relationships. I don't know, y'all really good at that, and just wanted to say, again, really, really appreciate it. I also wanted to say for the record that this, because some people have had questions, if this was 2-3 years ago, how did this get by without city council approval? It isn't some weird conspiracy from staff. Staff was doing what they should have been doing, and these types of agreements generally don't come to council. So I just don't want people to think that this was some weird undermining from staff. It is not their fault. And also, I would like to say that to make sure something like this doesn't happen again in the future, I very much trust staff and everyone involved for if something like flock cameras on public right-of-way comes up again, that y'all would just come to us and tell us that this was happening. But in the future, if there's new staff or new counselors, I think it's in the public interest to maybe have some words on the books that cut out something specifically for events like this. To say, hey, if one of these temporary use of right-of-way agreements comes by again, it involves a third party's use of surveillance, automatic license plate readers, whatever it ends up being. That's just something that I'm thinking about to make sure it doesn't happen. Yeah.
That they shouldn't be used, or that it should come to the council?
That it should come to the council. So, because I think in conversations with, that was like most of the conversations I had with people, was like, how did this happen? How did it not come to you if it was for cameras? And so I just think a good way to do that would be, in the future, if it's cameras, you come to us and all of that falls on us. So in the future, people aren't mad at staff, they're mad at us or happy with us. So the blame comes to us, you know, and the oversight. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this in our Friday meeting with Jeff, and not anticipating what technology could be in the future. Something like if there was going to be a right-of-way or other use agreement that the city could authorize where there's information about our residents that's being collected. I think that's kind of the scope of what we'd be looking at, right? It's very different than signage or information that's being conveyed to people. But if there's something that actively is collecting information about our people, that's kind of what we would want to provide oversight for.
Yeah, making the distinction between that and just a regular traffic monitoring camera, which is not gathering and databasing license plates or faces or anything like that. So the distinction, I think, is an important one.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a majority of councilors in favor, myself included, to have some language that we'll ask staff to prepare for a future meeting.
Thank you very much.
Great.
I have IB7, the housing. I just want to remind you that as of February 26, we have 2,507 people on the waiting list for Section 8. For public housing, we have 1,529. And I also want to bring to your attention, Iowa Boards of State, they conducted the PIT and HIC on January 28th. And soon will be released how many people was in house, or people, how many people, and we're going to see that for soon. So, yeah.
And I actually had a question following on the heels of that, because I know it was a HUD point in time.
Yes.
And that the latest, and it said unofficially that there were 38 unhoused individuals in Johnson County. Is that simply because just the full data hasn't been tallied yet?
I don't think HUD will publish that data for a couple of months, maybe.
It's lagging.
It lags,
Okay.
but that's the number you're referencing. Sounds like it could be the outdoor unsheltered count. There will also that'll be combined with an indoor sheltered count too.
Okay.
But I would guess the 38 is referencing the outdoor count. That was
Okay, it just seemed remarkably low in comparison to
No, but it's
the
still,
others.
the people just submitted everything on it was due last week. And until they evaluate, some people, they have something they have to go back and fix it, And after that, they're going to have the final count.
Yeah, no, I just wondered, because in that same paragraph, it was like the numbers were, there had been, it was fairly steady, but still 128 in 1 year that were sheltered. And so anyway, this helps contextualize it for me, why that particular number was so low. Is that we'll wait for the final numbers.
All right. Hearing nothing else, we're going to move on to item number 4, which is Certified Local Government Historic Preservation Annual Report. Welcome, welcome.
Hello, Council.
And hello, hello.
Hello. I am Jessica Bristow. I am the staff member for the Iowa City Historic Preservation Commission, and I'm here today to present you with the Certified Local Government Annual Report. The report will be reviewed by and approved by the Commission at their February 23rd meeting. Following the meeting, we will provide council with a copy of the report, and then we'll submit the report to the state on February 26th with the mayor's signature. Iowa City is a certified local government. This program is one of the results of the 1966 Historic Preservation Act and its amendments. The program was begun in 1980, and Iowa City joined by 1983. The program encourages historic preservation at the local level and the use of the Secretary of the Interior's standards for historic preservation. It also provides technical assistance through SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, while also providing funding for preservation activities. Part of our responsibility with this program is to submit an annual report each year. The state requires that this report is presented to you. The National Register of Historic Places is the most well-known part of the federal branch of historic preservation. It's different from, but corresponds with, our local landmark and district program. In Iowa City, we have 8 historic districts. All of these districts are also listed in the National Register of Places. I should note we also have 2 additional districts that are not local districts, the Melrose Historic District and Downtown, so they're not included in this count of 8. We also have 5 conservation districts. These districts are not listed in the National Register. It's only a local district. In addition to these districts, we also have individual landmarks. There are 87 properties that are either National Register listed, locally designated, or both. We have 67 local landmarks and 64 listed in the National Register. The annual report asks us questions about the Commission's work in both the National Register program and the local program. Throughout the annual report, there are some general questions about our work and programs. For instance, we have 12 seats on the Commission, but 4 of those are currently vacant. We had 11 meetings in 2025. One was canceled for lack of quorum. Another was rescheduled for the same reason. In fact, actually, this month's meeting was also rescheduled for lack of quorum. The report asks for the individual on staff or in the Commission who meets the Secretary of the Interior's professional qualifications. Currently, we have 2. I meet the qualifications in historic architecture and architecture history, and one of our commissioners, Margaret Beck, meets the qualifications in prehistoric archaeology. The report asks about our budget. The Commission does not have its own budget, but the Neighborhood and Development Services budget, sorry. Sometimes my bifocals don't work well with the computer screen, I will tell you that. The Neighborhood and Development Services budget includes $2,000 for our annual mailing to property owners and $750 for training and other expenses, which is what the state recommends we have for that. In addition, we have the $40,000 of the Historic Preservation Fund, and that's part of the general fund. Part of the local certified local government agreement states that we will maintain a system for survey and inventory of properties. The report asks if we undertook any survey or identification projects in 2025. We did not. Further, the report asks how we plan to meet that requirement in the future. While the Commission's work plan includes the priority of forming a landmark and district subcommittee, and some areas of focus, the city currently does not have the budget or resources to pursue them. The questions continue, asking if we had any National Register nominations projects this year and whether we listed any buildings or if any of them were removed or moved or demolished in the year. In both cases, the answer is no for 2025. They also ask about whether or not we had any local designations this year, which we did not. The next questions ask about the work performed by staff and the commission. Each year, the commission creates and approves a work plan as required by the state. The work plan is meant to direct the commission's work for the coming year. In recent years, the commission chose to focus on 3 action items. Oak Grove Park. The commission wants to honor the history of the Mexican laborers who lived in the barrio there from 1916 to 1936. Forming a subcommittee to be proactive in the work of new landmarks and districts, as I mentioned on the previous slide, and engaging with outside groups as much as they did during the recent landmarking efforts, engaging with council and the public as well. Ongoing work for the commission currently is focused on their awards program, which this year will be March 25th. I believe that's a Wednesday, and it's likely at 5:30 when we normally have it. And also transitioning the awards from a staff-produced program to one that is commission-produced. The report asks what assistance we provided for preservation issues or projects during the year. Applicants are always encouraged to meet with staff well ahead of time in the project planning process prior to submitting an application to discuss their projects. This year we had 90 applications. 8 of those were voided as duplicates or unnecessary. And so we ended up with 82, which is actually the lowest number of applications that we've had in the last 10 years. It also asks us to talk about any major projects, and so we've listed some. One example is that we worked with Public Space One to review the exterior condition of the Close Mansion, which is their largest historic property. We approved repair and replacement of trim and also provided comments on potential masonry projects. One of the other ways that we provide assistance on projects is through our Historic Preservation Fund. This year, I provided a summary of the fund since its implementation in July 2017 until the current time, and it showed that we have approved funding on 69 projects for 48 properties. Of those, 59 projects have been completed. The ones that were not completed include 6 that are actually still in process, 2 that were completed, but then the owners withdrew their request for funding because they didn't need it anymore. And then 2 projects that we did actually continue for a couple years, but never saw any progress, so we canceled those 2. The summary will be included as an attachment to the annual report, and so you will see all the numbers. The graphs here that I made show numbers of approved projects per district, just because I thought it was interesting, and the types of projects, because that is an important bit of information with how we use the fund. The report asks us about any issues, challenges, or successes that were encountered during the year. We've included several things in this section of the report. First, in February 2025, we changed the review process and how we manage the workload for preservation, including cross-training staff, in an effort to provide better customer service and quicker response time. The Commission was also successful in making progress on that Oak Grove Park study. There was a memorandum of agreement made with the DOT for the demolition, basically, of the Highway 6 bridge over the Iowa River, and the DOT has agreed to at least do a preliminary survey of that area. Also, the house at 1011 Woodlawn, which is pictured here, is currently being rehabilitated with visible progress now, which is really great. Several challenges include the commission vacancies, the reduction of the Historic Preservation Fund because we really liked that one-year high of $42,000 instead of $40,000. And then we do have the future loss of the Canongay House, which is a local landmark and National Register listed landmark. Despite the agreement to save the Sanks and Gilmore House, it's still a loss. The report continues by asking for a self-assessment on the Commission's progress on their work plan from last year. We include the continued success of the award ceremony and the progress on Oak Grove Park, but we note that future progress is hampered by a lack of commissioners and commissioners' lack of free time for additional projects. That's the extent of my presentation. Are there any questions?
You talked about this briefly, but the lack of commissioners is a big problem.
It is.
And I was curious if the commission itself has had any kind of internal discussions about what they think it would take to be a more, I don't know if it's attractive or more less effortful kind of commission, or is there anything that we can do as a council to make that process more attractive, to recruit more people to participate?
So far, they haven't had really, we've had kind of offhand conversations about it. I don't notice that commissioners necessarily think that it's a large commitment. We don't seem to have commissioners who have a problem with meeting once a month. We haven't really had a lot of need for subcommittees so far. We want to get to that point, but the main subcommittee is for the awards. So I can't say that I know exactly what is causing the issue. We do have several small districts, which means that the pool of applicants for those districts is very small. And sometimes it's getting the word out. We've done mailings, targeted mailings to properties in districts in the past, and didn't really see any success from that. We regularly tell commissioners just to talk to their neighbors and try to get people involved. But at this point, I'm not really sure, except for the small districts. I am hopeful that I talk to somebody who might apply really soon, and they might have another person who might apply. It's that kind of thing, basically. I think getting the word out is one of the most important things. From what I've heard, other commissions also have some issues with members, so I don't know. We're all so busy, it's kind of hard to find extra time.
Yeah, thanks.
Just as a quick, I saw you have a designation of Oak Grove Park as a conservation area. Is that correct? Or I think it's wonderful that area is drawn the interest of the commission. So I was just wondering if you can speak a little bit to that. I know that you
Sure.
said there was no budget, but
Right. And so the commission's interest is not necessarily it's actually definitely not in making a district there. We are interested in telling the story of the Mexican laborers who lived there. The houses or shacks that they lived in no longer exist. So there wouldn't necessarily be anything to protect. We know that in the future that park will go through a park rehabilitation like many other city parks do, and we have already talked to the Parks and Recreation Director about the fact that we wanted to be able to provide some input about potential names for the park so that could be recognized that way, and maybe potential signage. We've talked to her about signage for other parks as well and stuff like that. So that's kind of the direction it's going. And then the study from the DOT should help us have more information to back up and discuss and try to come up with some proposals along those lines.
yeah, no, I fully understand what you're saying. I think that the notion of some kind of commemoration or, some signage, something about the story of who lived here and who worked would be fantastic.
Yeah.
It's great to see the progress on 1011 Woodlawn.
Yeah.
It's looking great.
It is. At least it's not just burned ashes and wood.
Yes, it's very visible, but once this is completed, it'll also be very visible for our community. Thanks for your presentation. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to item number 5, which is Greater Iowa City Annual Update. Welcome,
Thank you very much.
you and the team.
I'll pull this open here. Mayor and Council, thank you very much for having us. My name's Nancy Bird with Greater Iowa City, Inc. I'm the president here. I'm here with my colleagues, Katie Gerlach and Mackenzie DeRue, and we're so glad to be in front of you today. One thing real quick, can you share how much time do we have so that we don't run over our allotment? To make sure for...
You should be good up to 30 minutes.
Okay, very good. Well, today I understand that you want to know a little bit more about the strategic investment districts and the next steps there, as well as the next steps for childcare initiative. So we are pleased to share more about that. First, I want to share our mission, make sure that we're sharing that. You know, we are at Greater Iowa City, Inc. about 2.5 years into our new name and this new mission, which is to elevate businesses, invest in strategic initiatives, and advocate for the economic resiliency of the entire county. Better Together 2030 is a partner, a collaborator of ours, and we really work hard on pillars 2, 3, and 4 of the 5-pillar all-in vision plan. I know all of you know quite a bit about that, so I won't go into it, but we do feel like we're the engine of those 3 pillars and are excited to work with our partner, Katie Gerlach, who plays that dual role as executive director of BT 2030. You all have seems like I've got passed out behind me, the annual reports from November, and I want to make sure, I don't know that everybody was able to make our annual meeting, but coalition building is something we feel like we do well, and this is just an example of all the different partners that we have across the county that we partner with in tandem with the private businesses, and I think this gives us really the strength of the organization that we can do things together that we can't do on our own. We are a public-private organization. That's what we call ourselves. Our board is structured as such. Jeff Ruin is a board member. We have the university and our private industry leaders on the board to help us make sure that we're stitching together those interests together and working together. Our area serves as a key talent and logistics hub for Eastern Iowa, balancing innovation, livability, and opportunity. And I'm going to share a little bit of data here, and I'm a poor substitute for Evan Doyle. He couldn't come tonight. He's developed a lot of these slides and the metrics in our community dashboard, but it's important to give some context to why we do what we do, and so that you all know that we're data-driven. That's very important to us. So this community data dashboard is available for anyone to look at, but the following slides pull from this, as well as our partnership with a new partnership with Heartland Forward, which is a think and do tank that we have a small contract with. That's an extension of our staff. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but there are a lot of data measures here. One of them, first of all, just to note that we are a growing county. We're the 3rd fastest growing county in Iowa over the past 12 years, and that's an important indication to the livability here, and we know that that's important. We have over 156,000 people that are living here, and we're tracking that. Our population growth and migration trends are on the upswing. So we have these slides here. Evan can go into further detail, but one thing that I like to look at is really that international migration rate. We are far above both the Iowa average as well as the national average, and it's a good indication for us. The impact of out-of-county visitors, as we know, we have a very strong visitor base, and that really plays a part in our economy. The number of visitors that we have here that are spending is critical to the larger region. And as you can see, it's changed a little bit. You know, right prior to the pandemic, we are at a peak, and we are back on that route with 5 million visitors and a lot of spending. The industry mix and employment, this is a county-wide snapshot. However, we know that the number of businesses that we have here, larger businesses in particular, they require a real hand count. So we work hard in the business retention and expansion surveys to count what our largest industry leaders, where their employment levels are right now. And quite frankly, they've shifted a lot. And whether or not all of them are even still located in the Iowa City area. A lot of headquarters have shifted, and that's something that we take pride in measuring that and following on it. So you'll hear more from us at the end of the year after we dig into that work. But you can see that healthcare, retail, hospitality remain our larger industry sectors, as well as manufacturing is something that we're trying to grow. Our business climate in general, 95% of the businesses here have less than 50 employees, and that's a really important thing to note because we believe retention comes first. If you're growing your local businesses, that money continues to circulate locally, and we're growing our own people, and that's a goal of the organization. We know what our gross domestic product is. We think we need to increase that. We know that 10% of employees work for a firm less than 5 years old, so a lot of new businesses here. And this executive summary really comes from the Heartland Forward team, who has identified our regional competitiveness. We are very, very strong in that. Our talent pipeline, there's opportunity there to really grow in new companies. And health and wellness, strong but declining. And that's when it gets into more of the low infant mortality rate and also eroding public health outcomes. So even though the economy looks is diverse, but we're also really concerned about livability, and we track that as well. But we're focusing tonight just to talk about really more economic measures. So our programs include business support, economic development, community development, events, and connection through all of those things. And the business support piece in particular, we started a program called the Business Resource Center a year and a half ago. And last year at our annual meeting, we announced that we had 161 visitations through that center, which is our businesses helping other businesses. And in January alone, we've had 44 appointments. So we're on point to really blow up that this past number for the past year, which is an indication that it takes time to grow programs, and that also we're doing it well, we're doing it thoughtfully, and we're doing it with local people. And we appreciate all the support that we get from the city to through this, including the grant programs that you let. Those grantees come in and they have to sit down with a business support person, one of our providers, to get some guidance on how to keep that business going so the grants really hit home. So we think that's been a very successful partnership, and we thank you for that. Now I'm going to turn it over to Katie Gerlach to talk a little bit about the Strategic Investment District in the Sycamore area. And we really invite you all to join the conversation and ask questions as we go through, because this is a partnership. We need your input, we need your guidance, and we're excited about the work.
Great.
With that, Katie.
Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you. Katie Gerlach with Greater Iowa City and Executive Director of Better Together 2030. Wanted to talk a little bit about the Sycamore Strategic Investment District. You all have seen this map many times, and that's our charrette team that was out feet in the street, really getting their sense of the land as they were developing the plan. I do want to highlight, I'm not going to show the plan, and I'm not going to highlight any of the concepts. We're keeping those private. We're meeting with property owners, we're meeting with investors, but we don't want to scare any current business owners that we hope to retain, and we don't want to give the public any impression that a plan is underway and already going to be ready for shovels. So we're happy to sit down with you one-on-one and share those plans, but at this point we're going to keep those in-house and keep them at the public-private partnership they are. So I wanted to share our Sycamore implementation table. And it's a pretty large document, so I'm trying to break it up, but wanted to show you maybe the 4-year goals for the Sycamore plan, and we've broken that into 4 program areas: the Neighborhood Engagement Task Force, Business Support, Redevelopment, Branding, Signage, and Wayfinding. So starting with Neighborhood Engagement, you'll see this year we are looking at creating a task force to address the Sycamore Strategic Investment District. We'll be doing continued property outreach and meetings, reviewing some programs and opportunities, as well as making investor connections. We also will continue business support, recruitment, and retention. And retention is really critical in this area, especially because this will be an incremental development. Want to make sure that part is clear. This isn't going to be a huge redevelopment in one fell swoop. Sycamore has a lot. What we learned through the charrette process is that Sycamore is pretty heavily well tenanted, and there are small businesses that are there because of the rent prices, because they can do business there. So we want to make sure that we're retaining those businesses, that we're creating opportunities for growth, but that it's not a one fell swoop mall redevelopment like you might see in other cities in Iowa right now. We're working with property owner outreach. You're taking the first step tonight with an urban renewal area consideration, and we're hoping to continue discussions around wayfinding and grant programs. So I wanted to highlight our 2026 work plan. So I summarized all of that table into these top 5. First, you're going to see advocacy for the urban renewal area establishment. We spoke at P&Z. You'll hear from Mackenzie Giroux tonight in support of that establishment of that district. We'll continue engaging with the comprehensive plan to make sure that it complements what we heard through our planning process as well. Three is probably where we're spending the majority of our time. We have been significant time and effort in engaging with the current Iowa City Marketplace ownership group. And I think there's really an opportunity over this coming year, and we'd welcome support in doing so, in organizing the Eastdale Plaza. There are over 30 owners of Eastdale Plaza. People might not be aware that there's 30 different suites within that space. And so one of the first steps in Eastdale Plaza is to help organize those owners, find out what they're doing, find out what their plans are, and then see if we can get some people rowing in the same direction. If the market and the private market had been able to do that, I think it would have already happened. So you might be seeing program opportunities from us coming forward around some intervention that we think we can offer at Eastdale Plaza. We'll also be doing data analysis with Heartland Forward. Continued, you started to see some sneak peeks of that. And I've got a really great graph I'm excited to show you later. We'll also continue our business support and retention. Wanted to highlight childcare solutions and then hopefully leave it open for questions for all of you. But as you know, the City of Iowa City invested $750,000 of ARPA money into childcare over the last 3 years. Johnson County did the same, and we've been raising money for private investment in childcare. Heartland Forward, when we had our first meeting, they said to us, "What are you doing in childcare? Because you are unique in this country. We're seeing childcare and the cost of childcare cost burden as household income continue to go up, and we can't wait for you to see what we've uncovered about yours." So they showed us this graph. You can literally see the point of intervention that Iowa City and the state of Iowa invested in childcare to reduce the cost of childcare as a financial burden on a family. And again, we've seen great outcomes. Of those 9 licensed childcare centers, over half of them are in Iowa City. We're seeing great increase in full-time staffing, increase in slots. The data you're not seeing here is the impact of the mental health. Childcare workers are reporting improved mental health. They're showing that they're not using social services as often. They've been able to quit second jobs, and they've been able to provide better care. So really exciting. Also really great to be able to visually show you exactly where your intervention helped. We'd love to take questions.
I'm kind of curious. Can you go back to slide 10? And I think I understand this slide correctly. This is private industry sector. So that healthcare big bar there does not include the university. It doesn't include the VA. It doesn't include. Is that how I am supposed to read that?
This is private industry.
Okay.
So when you see that report, it's all the NAICS codes that are showing up under healthcare as a private employer. And so when if I could have a interactive dashboard right now, I could probably dive in and show you which NAICS codes make that up. But it's the supply chain for healthcare. You're thinking of CIVCOs. You're thinking of even, I'm trying to think which other IDT would classify as healthcare, that sort of work.
And this chart is inclusive of your whole service area. It's not specific to Iowa City. Is that correct?
This is Johnson County.
Got it. Okay.
So the data share can only be broken down by MSA, which is actually Johnson and Washington County, and then Heartland Forward has broken it down specifically for Johnson County from that.
Okay. Well, that's kind of all a lead up to that. In the study for the comprehensive plan, I know one aha moment there was am I too close?
No, I'm too close.
Oh, okay. Was that we have a really, really high proportion of publicly owned land. Mm-hmm. And not-for-profit businesses. Are you guys studying that? Is that part of this sort of analysis of what a healthy economic ecosystem is, and what can you say about that?
Yeah, so I think there's really an opportunity for the Economic Development Commission for us to do a deep dive into some of these data pieces especially, but I wish I could show you the interactive dashboard where we're showing how many employees are employed by the state of Iowa in Johnson County. It's significant. It's probably well over, we've compared ourselves to other R1 communities, and the, these other communities that have a similar industry mix, we're way out of whack, even with large university towns like Iowa City, in terms of how many people are employed by the state. That also includes the school district, the city, the county, and the University of Iowa. So we're heavily public sector. And that is something that's on our radar in terms of watching and trying to grow the advanced manufacturing sector, which we think can be a complement to some of the data center and other work that's happening to our north. It's probably much more of a long-term strategy than the initial quick wins that you see with a data center. But we're looking long-term, more in the quantum computing and what's going to last beyond when data centers get even more efficient.
Okay. I would welcome that Economic Development Committee to conversation sometime soon.
You said how many office space in Eastdale Plaza?
How many office spaces there are?
You said the
Yeah, so
number.
there's over 30 condo owners in Eastdale Plaza.
And but is this like really vacant? Some of them, or
No, I would say there are 30 owners of Eastdale Plaza. The vacancy rates are higher than you'd like, but I would say there's probably 7 vacant that we're aware of.
Would you mind going back to the slide where it talks about your outreach? I think
Oh, even
it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Am I going crazy? There was one. There was one. It says.
Was it for the business resources?
It was like number 3. You said was your most. What you've been doing the most work in, and that was like property owners.
Yeah. There we go. My
There
work
we
plan.
go. Okay, thank you so much. I suppose I imagine you're doing work in this regard in terms of various types of gatherings, but one thing that jumps out to me is I know specifically in that area there's just such a high number of renters, and when I think about I guess I was just wondering what types of engagement have you done or do you plan to do when it comes to tenants? Because I know that I've lived in the same place for 6-7 years as a tenant, and if this was happening and I didn't know about it and I didn't have input, I would be mad. So I guess that's my question.
Yeah, so as part of the charrette process last year, we opened up the entire process for communities to apply to be involved in our charrette team. But we also made sure to purposely engage a neighborhood resident and someone who could be responsible for making sure that things had the neighborhood perspective. So in this neighborhood, I think she wouldn't mind me sharing that Karen Cubby was the neighborhood representative, and she attended every single session that we had. We also had neighborhood outreach sessions at Two Dogs Pub. And then with the establishment of the URA, we've gotten increased public interest. I've taken every meeting that a neighbor has requested about it. And so I know you've referred some neighbors to us to do so, and so I've been happy to take those meetings. We're happy to sit down with them, talk about the neighborhood, talk about what they want to see, and talk about business retention and expansion that isn't necessarily disruptive to the ecosystem that is currently humming along there, but maybe could do much better for everybody.
Cool. Thank you.
I don't know. I see that you're talking about like Eastdale Plaza, Iowa City Marketplace, and is this not including the Sycamore?
So we're calling the whole area the Sycamore Strategic Investment District. So it goes from about Sycamore Street, Highway 6, up through First Avenue, up to the railroad. And so it's really your urban renewal area that you're seeing tonight.
The one that we just
Can you go-
established, yeah.
Can you go?
I guess I was talking about the Sycamore Mall itself.
Yes.
That's including on here,
Yes,
right?
that is. So that's technically called the Iowa City Marketplace right now.
Okay, sure.
Yep. So that was after Lucky's, but we affectionately call it the Sycamore Mall.
I see. Yeah, we're still doing that. Yeah. Thank you.
How is the communication? I've heard about communication issues with the person who is the Iowa City Marketplace owner.
So we're working on establishing an engagement, and I've actually been in touch with the broker as well as the owners. Nancy's had one-on-one conversations with the ownership group. We're hoping to go down and meet with them here shortly and share about our vision for Sycamore and how they can come and join us as a positive property owner in the process. But because they're so far away, they don't see what the neighbors see every day. They don't see the massive parking lot. They're not seeing, and hopefully this makes KCRG, I gave it to them, that cool pothole that had all the rubber duckies floating in it.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
They don't see that. They don't see the comments on the news stories about people's positive memories of Sycamore and how much it could be a neighborhood gathering place. And really that even if it is tenanted, which it's not completely, it just doesn't feel like a place anyone wants to be. So we're going to really show them what the place actually is versus what they're seeing in their rent rolls.
Yes.
Good.
This could be for you or Nancy, because I know that Heartland Forward was something that there was community members that gathered around there. I'm just curious to know, what are the next steps there?
Let me take that. So actually I just got off of a call with them. We're in the middle, Evan and I are in a 10-week curriculum with Heartland Forward. They have consultants that meet with us regularly that are reviewing our work plans, that are reviewing the data that we've undertaken. I would say we're, hopefully they're not watching this, but I think we're about 10 steps ahead of the other communities that are involved in this. And so oftentimes I'll come back and say, like, we're on the right track. They said that we're on the right track. But sometimes they're offering different perspectives, and that helps us see our economy and our workforce in a different way. But I will say in the 3 weeks that we've met with them since our community conversation, we've already received 2 RFPs that were brought to our attention for different opportunities for work, especially related to quantum computing and advanced manufacturing around the supply chain for data center expansion in the Heartland.
So,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
First of all, thank you to everybody who came to that launch. It was really great to see everybody. I think everybody probably walked away with that from that launch with a different understanding of what Heartland Forward is. But not only are they a think and do tank, I look at them as an extension of our staff and the resources our staff has, because we're a small but mighty team. But these guys are really well resourced across the country. They have connections with companies and data, clearly talent that really just affords us an opportunity to understand what others are doing and put us in good comp light. So we're excited about some of the information that's coming in, because we're not chasing companies per se, but if they're giving us companies that align with our industry mix, that's amazing. So we've gotten a couple of them, and we're going to look at them, but also keep our local staff here working on retention and growing our local companies. So.
Are there any other questions about the Sycamore Parks? I wanted to pivot to childcare, but
Yeah.
if you've got-
I just had a sort of maybe broader than just the Sycamore or the IC Marketplace question. And that is, you guys are working on a big idea. The city then puts together an urban renewal district, which signals the city is willing to make financial investment. It seems like then there's another thing that has to happen between all of these signals and somebody actually investing. What's that process look like? What happens?
What's the thing?
Yeah, how do you get from a big idea and some money to the thing?
So I would say we're going to learn together on this one, because this is probably, as one of your P&Z counselors said, James Davies, he said this is one of the first proactive urban renewal areas he's seen, where it's not a developer bringing a proposal and then the urban renewal area is laid out.
Yeah.
This is actually just sending a signal to the development community that we're ready to work together. I think it also allows for incremental development in a way that we haven't seen before, in smaller stage. Ideally, if and we should sit down and look at this plan together. I think you'll see that it's staged and phased, where perhaps some of the current businesses that are in the Sycamore lot could become tenants in the mall. And then that lot and the parking lot, which is massive, could become housing for the expansion of P&G, which is right across the street. We've met with some interested housing developers that would like to make that workforce housing go.
Exciting.
I want to remind us that we have about 6 minutes.
I just want to say 2 comments. One is that I very much like the idea of the incremental development, as well as retaining what's there, because it is its own neighborhood, and while it has fallen on some times, it is a neighborhood, and I know that people, want to retain that flavor, but have it better, right? And so I appreciate that this isn't just a sort of sweeping of, let's get all the game pieces off the board and put new ones on. I think that will do some real relationship building within the district itself. So I applaud that. The other question I had actually was on the childcare solutions page. And one is to ask a really dumb question. In talking about childcare cost burden, is this specific to the centers? That chart where it drops?
So the chart is actually the Johnson County in general.
Okay,
So
so
the
the
average
parents?
resident in census data, using the data that Lightcast offers as well as other sources that they've combined, the overall financial burden of childcare has reduced in Johnson County to 20. It looks way better because it starts at 22. It's still pretty high. 23% is still not great.
Yeah.
But it's better than the national average, which continues to go up, which is 27, 28%. We were on that trajectory. We were much higher than that trajectory. And now we've course corrected with an intervention like wage enhancement. I also want to make sure to acknowledge that it's also due to the $3 million invested by Johnson County in infant and toddler scholarships and in bridging the gap in childcare assistance between what someone receives as a benefit and what a center it actually costs to take care of that child.
Thank you for that. Like Jessica Bristow, I cannot read those numbers. So I appreciate getting that context.
Well, Mackenzie and I are happy to sit down with any of you and do a deep dive on this data dashboard from Heartland Forward. I think everyone's going to find something interesting in there, not only economic data, industry mix, business data, but also really quality of life and things that you really only see in the United Way needs assessment or things like that. You're going to find it being updated in real time. What took Evan and I about 2 to 3 months. Evan, he was hand collecting that data and inputting it into Tableau. They got the census data drop for 2024 and 2020, parts of 2025, and they had it uploaded in there within hours. Wow. So, we're really seeing the benefit of that partnership.
Could you throw up the slide with the QR code on that real quick?
Yeah.
And then can I ask one last quick question? What's next?
For childcare?
For childcare.
Yeah.
Everybody's facing budget problems, and public-private partnerships are difficult it's an ongoing uphill battle to convince businesses, especially if they're, as the data shows, less than 50 employees, right? To be able to buy in and say, this is something either I want to do, or more to the point, in many cases, I'll bet that I feel I can do as a business owner, right? So what's next?
There's a couple of things. First, please advocate to your state representatives to look at the bill that expands the Child Care Solutions Fund. That's a bipartisan bill. We're seeing these 10 pilot communities with wage enhancement and other investments seeing success, but we need to keep the funding going from the state level. They tried to open it as a private partnership only, and that was not as successful, and so now they're expanding the public investment in that partnership. So if that can get across the finish line, that opens up a lot of the funds available for communities. Second is that locally, we've had a full-time staff person knocking on every door for fundraising for the private investment portion, and without competing with human and social services, which we promised we wouldn't do as part of this, the private investment isn't there. So we can go after grants, we can go after the private investment, but it only would harm those human and social services that also need those grants. So we've been working as a coalition to talk about what comes next in transitioning, and United Way has expressed interest in being able to establish this as one of their programs and fold it into the fundraising strategy at the corporate level that they're already successful at doing. So look for more information. I know that they've been in touch with city staff. We've been working on the transition as of July 1 would be the goal, that United Way would then administer and fundraise for the program. Because right now, Johnson County is doing all of the administration on this program.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, we have just over a minute. Thank you all. Appreciate it. You all coming.
Thank you very much.
Yes. We're going to move on to item number 6, which is fiscal year 2027 budget discussion. Just want to kind of give council a little recap of where we are, because today on our formal agenda, we do have 3 goal bonding that we'll be voting on today. That is on our agenda, some bonding that'll be there. And then we also have to establish the max levy rate for the county melon that has to be out by March 5th is the deadline. So just want to remind us of that.
I'll kick us off. I know that last time we talked and made a commitment to come back to it and talk as an item about the property tax, the levy. And I just want to say that I am in favor of keeping it at staff recommendations, partially because in the big picture, this is part of what voters voted for. And I do think that it would be a loss of trust from the community. We don't have exit polls. We don't know why people voted the way they did for lost. But this was on the docket. And we are putting a great deal of the property tax bucket into additional workflows or projects. And I feel that this is keeping the faith with the community to keep this recommendation so that property owners can see something in their indirect property relief.
I agree with Councilor Alter. When I think about this, and the last time we were framing it around how could we imagine spending this money, I'm not really thinking about it that way. I'm thinking about what did the voters vote for, and also, had this not passed, what would we have done? And I can't imagine increasing property taxes, all of that. And I mean, that would be increasing people's mortgages and increasing people's rent, and I don't think I would have done that. So in my mind, there's some kind of balancing act of, we knew we were going to have to do something to raise revenue. Lost helps a whole lot, but I do think it's both fair and right to provide some level of levy reduction. And the levy reduction that we're providing, people might not even see their property tax go down much, if at all. They'll just kind of keep it stable because people's values of their homes will continue to go up, and those values of those apartments will continue to go up. So I too feel like the balance that staff had recommended feels like everyone's going to be a little bit frustrated, but that's probably the right compromise.
Yeah, I guess for me, I would say this, I would just say ditto. I really do think that many individuals that don't pay, they were face value at the polls. They voted for that property tax reduction, and although there are greater opportunities that I think, there are always opportunities that we can use the funds for, but I think in this instance, I'm going to kind of stay where we are with the staff recommendation.
No, and I totally appreciate that, and I suppose my my thoughts was, you know, what are we always thinking, or what is one of the main things that is always on our mind when we do anything in the council? It's the fact that we are always shaking in our boots about what the state is going to do with property tax, right? And how much less money we are going to have every year. So I think while it might seem like not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, I just think having a conversation about what $1 million could look like, and I feel as though it's kind of odd to me, maybe, how sometimes we have conversations where it's just like, man, like we're so flustered, and then about property tax reform, and then we are afraid of looking at what potentially we could do with $1 million. And, you know, we can always go like anecdotally about, you know, people knocking on doors. We, like you said, I mean, it's right. We don't have don't have those exit polls. And I feel like all of us would come back with different types of anecdotes about what residents are saying. I know myself when I was selling this to people, trying to convince them not to vote no and to not tell other people to vote no. A lot of it was, well, I'm not anticipating the 50% is not going to go straight to just handouts to property owners. The vast majority of which, you know, like their property values are going up, their equity is going up. And it's, for me, it's more in tune with what we were talking about, the whole conversation with Lost, when it comes to making sure that all of this goes towards the people most impacted. I don't think this is going to make or break lighting the city on fire or anything. You know, it's not. I just think it's a worthy conversation. And in looking at our memo from the city manager about this, it looks like one thing I like, you know, I think it's a good idea. It's a good conversation driver to have, just like options in front of us. You know, I think that is really nice, and I think it's like pretty transparent to people in the public. And it seems like we're talking about additional infrastructure, which when you, Councilor Moe, when you talk about your concerns about us falling behind on facilities and infrastructure, it's not on deaf ears. You know, I think about that all the time too. So, and I also think about when I was driving home the other day and I had to just pull over the car because there was a giant water main break right by John's and Artifacts, and I believe there were 6 water main breaks that day. And then I toured the water plant and got more information about like the age of our stuff. And I know that the initial talking about, you know, this is just one example of something we could do. Invest in the development of the plans, the planning for how do we go about upgrading our infrastructure and water. And the thing about this funding is that it would take it would need to be spent within the year. So you could spend in the year $1 million on the Mercer Park parking lot. You know, that's something we're going to need to, because it's really bad, you know. Or additional street pothole prevention that people are always talking to us about, and that I'm getting emails about all the time. But then that would give us more room in our capital improvement plan down the line to address water mains breaking, you know, and address our infrastructure. So next year around, when it goes from 20 to 70 degrees, things don't blow up in our streets. Which, by the way, sidebar, I do just want to say that I got a bunch of feedback from like the owner of Artifacts and John's and other people around the city that our city staff did a really, really good job of all those water main breaks. And so I just want to put that on record that, I mean, it was super odd to me that in talking about water main breaks, people sent me nice emails. That's just, I just wanted to put that on record. But I don't know. I guess that's where my thought is. You know, I think it's clear that this is heavily the staff's recommendation, and I totally appreciate that. But I guess my perspective is that I think in the face of like the looming economic property or the property tax stuff, I think it would be prudent to look in how we can try to get ahead of this infrastructure stuff. Yeah.
I just believe that I think everything you said, we can use that 1 million for many things, But also, I don't know, I have hard time calculating the, 1 million, and if we didn't do it, we're going to reduce the levy by 20 cents per 1,000. Am I right? And if we taxing, if the house tax at example, $100,000, isn't that $20 reduction? Am I right? Yeah.
You need the roll back.
It's gonna depend on rollback
Rollback.
rates.
No, but if, I'm saying if
Oh.
the rollback is 100,000, like my house may be 200.
The taxable value.
And the
Yeah.
rollback was like 50%, then it will be 100,000. And for any rollback, like as a level of 100,000, that will be $20, basically. I don't think the resident will feel the $20 from like their tax. That is not like really a lot of money. And at the same time, this is not reducing the property tax by $20 for somebody who is like $100 value. And this is not going to make them, if they are renting for someone, they're going to reduce the rent or anything. And I still believe the loss hit the low-income and vulnerable people very hard. And if we want to do it really, we want to do something that will also benefit them, we can do that. But I just believe reducing everybody by $20 versus using the $1 million to do something else that will really benefit the resident of Iowa City. Even if we told them that, it will be like really good. Some people, I think they understood it like 50% will be go to the property tax. The way that they understood it is like, my bill will be reduced by 50%. If like I'm paying $5,000 tax a year, I'm gonna be paying only $2,500, and that will be amazing. I will go for that. But like I think $20 or $30 or maybe $100 is not going to have that a lot of effect to them comparing with like if we use $1 million. That's why I still believe, I understand what you're saying about the voter, I appreciate, but still I believe that, we should use this like really to maximize the benefit of the lost.
There are different ways to think about the benefits, and some of it is monetary, and some of it has to do with sort of the times that we're in. And I absolutely agree with you that the actual dollar amount is not that much. And I think that was much to the consternation of the person who came, and that on its face value, people thought that their property taxes would be going down quite a bit, right? Mm-hmm. I had to have many a conversation saying, you're not going to get a rebate check. It's going to probably see that you don't see your property taxes going up because we're going to be putting it into other arenas so that we don't have to borrow against or raise the levy. But I think that there's other values. Maximizing the value of this loss, some of it is about making sure that the public feels that they trust trust us at the times when we've all sat here at some point with constituents who are angry, right? And yet they've come here to do the right thing. They've come to the government to say, do something. Well, we asked them to do something. We asked them to vote for this property tax, and we've each gone to our own networks and to people and found the right ways to say, this is why this is good, right? At this point, I am not comfortable saying there's value in having the public trust us. And I know that is not what you were saying, that is not what you were intimating at all, Councilor Sala. I just wanted to further state my own thinking on it, not as a direct contradiction to what you were saying. So just thank you for letting me finish my thought.
I mean, I'm in favor of not lowering the levy just because I don't think it's prudent to leave this money on the table, and we know that we leverage our dollars much more efficiently than an individual property owner can. That's the point of raising property taxes and pooling our resources. The $1 million invested in pavement rehabilitation now, as we've talked about so many times, will save us money down the road. I remember 3 or 4 years ago, the graph that included if we pass lost and we're using this $2 million a year, I think we were still going to fall short with the additional amount that we're talking about. So I don't see why we would leave that money on the table. I very much appreciate people's concerns about where, relief versus avoidance. I don't think, and again, I go back to what other communities who are similarly situated are doing, what their constituents voted for as well in those communities. And I really don't think there's, I just don't know, in my, 7th year sitting up here, I just don't want us to leave that money on the table. I don't think we have an obligation to push that money back out the door. And I think we have an obligation to leverage it for the benefit of the full community. And I think pavement rehabilitation is a great way to do that.
So knowing, oh, by the way, I'm not sick, but my kid is, so if anybody's worried, I'm just doing this as a precautionary measure.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Knowing that, we were going to have one of two possible futures ahead of us. One was going to be with in regards to the lost funding. One was going to be what are we going to have to cut, or how are we going to spend the resources? And so just want to point out how grateful I am, and I meant to, hopefully, unfortunately they're not still in the room, but the work that Greater IC did with this, because the discussion we're having right now was by far the one I was much happier to be having, right? I think on this question of relief versus avoidance in terms of how we do this property tax thing, just a few things for clarification. And I know that in the comments, I know my fellow counselors understand this, but just so people in the public understand this $1 million we're talking about is not, it is part of the property tax relief bucket, right? So when we're talking about how could we spend that, and the projects that were mentioned, things like roads or whatever, that falls into the category. So it's not like that money we could take and use in some of the social service spending that we're doing with the other 50%. So just so everybody that's following this sort of understands that these are somewhat tagged dollars. So we're limited on the things we can do with those just off the bat. One of the things I like about the proposal in general that came before us is it's got a lot of really nice balance. I'm talking about the whole amount of lost. So, and I know I'm probably not the only one that's gotten a lot of feedback from our community partners and other groups that are really quite happy with the things we're looking at. And that is, one of those wonderful times where cooperation between the policy guidance that we have and the way city staff has taken that and applied that to the actual dollars and put things on it. I think part of kind of going through this 20% debt levy reduction, I know some of the stuff that's been part of our discussion is like, okay, so who is it helping? If we do this, is it giving help to property owners who maybe aren't struggling as much as other people? And I think, well, with an instrument like that, there's going to be some truth to that. But I also know, and this gets to what Councilor Weiland was talking about, from those doorstep conversations, there's a lot of people who own property, but they're struggling. So I think, the fact that, the drop in the thing isn't going to necessarily make anybody do cartwheels. I do take seriously, or I think there's a good point made that does, in the mix of things we're doing in terms of like, okay, so we're doing things for a lot of different places in a lot of different ways. And a lot of the projects that my fellow council members so rightly point to as valid and good projects, we are using the other parts of that 50% in the property tax relief to pursue those things. So I'm comfortable with putting that all together, and when you put that all together as a mix, that this is actually one of those things that does signal this combination of relief versus avoidance, and the relief is the smallest. I mean, that's a pretty small piece of the, relatively small versus the other stuff, like 8%, 10%, I can't remember the exact number, but it's what's the, is that,
One of the 7 million.
right, so 7 million of the half of the 14 million.
Correct.
So, yeah, so I think I also am comfortable with this proposal as written. The other thing, and I think that Councilor Burgess brought up last time, was if we, are we hobbling ourselves in the future? And I think that was answered to my satisfaction, that because it's debt levy and not the regular other parts of the property tax levy, that we would not be hobbling ourselves. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think that was an important thing. So with those things in mind, I find myself kind of supportive as the proposal as presented to us. I think it has a nice balance. I think it hits a lot of the right notes. And it will help people that are in their homes, or at least give them that good faith, like, not every property owner is, their value might be going up, but they might still be struggling to make those mortgage payments and stay in their homes, so that, they don't have to sell out or sell to a private equity firm or whoever comes along and tries to offer them something. So I think if we can kind of do a little bit of that and a little bit of the other things, I'm comfortable with that.
So it does sound like we will maintain the recommended max levy rate. All right, anything else budget related?
There's an item on there that's really a me item, I think, more than anyone, and that would be the wanting to do a study of some sort. I believe it's from an IP a month ago, and that would be allocation of funds to public infrastructure. I think I've talked to a couple of you up here, and I just so everyone knows, I think that, much in line with this conversation, we are really at risk of falling behind with roads, with facilities, and I'm worried about that. And it's not because of mismanagement, it's just because we have a lot of stuff to take care of and a lot of stuff to keep eyes on. I go back to that report from about a decade ago, where we have listing of our facilities, how much real estate we have, when it's been most recently updated, and also how much it's been used. And so maybe the right way to think about this is to take this off of we need to have this for the current year's budget discussion, but maybe pair it with an upcoming work session. And I'm specifically thinking about the cost recovery guideline conversation. To me, should have discussions about usage and facilities involved with it. Is that a reasonable way to structure that kind of conversation? Or am I expanding that discussion
It'd be
outside of what you?
an expansion of what we had envisioned. We were looking more from a programmatic standpoint of cost recovery. The facility one is a little bit more challenging.
And I think you narrow the facilities to the ones that are related to the ones that the public interfaces with the most and where we offer programming as maybe a starting point.
Yeah, I'd have to give that some thought, right? There's not an entry fee to the rec center. There's programming fees for certain portions of the rec center, or a pool pass, for example. We do our best to frame up whatever discussion the council wants.
I think that in lieu of the previous setting the levy conversation, I'm not feeling a need to recharacterize that 10% and how we spend it. Because we need to spend it now on roads and we need to spend it now on infrastructure. But we also, moving forward, I would love to invest in more study and long-term planning for how we do our investments in facilities. And I would love to be in a position where we could, not only rehabilitate our current rec centers, but build a new one on the west side of town. I'd love to be in a position where we can build new fire stations. Like, I would love to be talking about that kind of thing. And so I do want to have that conversation eventually, but not for this budget.
Got it. Good thing we have free buses, because they'll be able to travel the city to get to our current rec centers. In the same vein, I just want to make mention, this isn't me suggesting this is what we do, but as the city is becoming developers of affordable housing, I think we should at some point consider a CIP line for affordable housing. So I'll just leave it at that, so that we are budgeting for building.
I think that's a really good idea.
Yep. Yeah. Finally.
Yeah. One thing unless anybody else has anything to say regarding that.
Budget?
Yes. It's about the budget. So if there's one thing that maybe I think could also be helpful to our conversations and something that I just want to understand better myself would be, I think as a city, it has been, we budget very conservatively in terms of what we think we are going to get, and we budget for all positions, even if they're not filled. I guess if there's one thing that maybe us as a council, it would be good for us to examine and talk about is the history of how that money has or has not been spent. So if they're, like, say over the past 5-10 years, if that money, it's an average of $3 million every year that we don't spend, I think maybe having that conversation or just that information in front of us so we can better understand the impact of budgeting in that way.
So I do think maybe Jeff can speak to that a little bit because each department, when they don't spend something, it's in the budget, it's identified, and sometimes we used to live in the world of surpluses. We haven't lived there for a while with significant surpluses. So if you can just speak to that.
Yeah, so we have mostly we're talking about the general fund here, right? We're not talking about enterprise funds. So we have a reserve policy where we look to cap our general fund reserve at about 35%. Once it gets above 35%, if we finish with surpluses, your strategic plan actually calls for two different investments. One is in the emergency fund, which fund balance is currently a little over $5 million. The other is our facilities fund, which is what we used to fund City Park Pool. It has helped with the senior center renovations, and we'll need that going forward for police and fire and city hall and rec centers and things like that. We had in 2026, we're able to do a small transfer to the emergency fund and a larger transfer of $5 million to the facilities reserve fund. The prior 2 or 3 years, we weren't able to make any transfer. Is it 2 or 3, do you recall? So the prior 2, we did not have a surplus to transfer, so those funds did not receive any investment. And then before then, we probably had 5 years, I'm guessing, of surpluses that we were able to put in primarily into the facilities reserve fund, and that's how the City Park Pool, again, was able to be funded with cash and not borrowing beyond the limit that we have. Is that helpful? And I'd say in those 5 years, it was probably anywhere from $1 million, a couple million, to up to $4 million a year. We were kind of in that range for a period of time.
And the way that we do budget amendments, it always has to balance, right? So the budget amendment is like the true up to actual. Is that a fair way to say it? Like what we're expecting it to actually be rather than...
Well, we're showing, so like when you're looking at, for instance, the 26th Amendment, and we're showing the $5 million transfer, we're recognizing that we're running up against that general fund reserve limit of 35%. It's not a hard limit, it's our own policy limit of that 35%. So in that way, yes, we're truing up. We're seeing that we're going to be exceeding that, and then we're diverting those funds to those other reserve accounts.
For the 2026 budget, I think we talked last year, we were anticipating a $2.6 million deficit was what we budgeted.
For the the current fiscal year that we're in, yes.
Yeah, and the transfers for the facilities fund and the emergency fund, is that a surplus?
From the prior year.
That's from 2025?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So do we know yet what how we're going to end up this year?
I don't, unless our finance folks have their crystal ball over there. No, we don't. So we're typically looking back a year,
Yeah.
and then next year at this time, we would assess where we ended up with 2026. And if all ends well, we have a transfer. If not, like the last 2 years prior, we didn't have anything to transfer.
I think this is just a good conversation to have and be transparent about because, I was thinking the deficit to surplus that you were talking about was all 2026, which would have been a swing of like over $7 million, which seems like a lot,
Yeah.
right? More than 10% of our general fund. So for like when we're looking at whether it's kind of ending better than we expected and having that surplus in order to transfer into the reserve, like the emergency or the facilities reserve funds, like I'm sure it's in the budget amendment documents, but is council interested in that being like maybe elevated as far as the conversation? Just because I think some of these numbers are, I'm just remembering the conversation that we had up here about the city park pool and like having extra money or not, and then coming back to, yes, we're going to have an additional $5 million. Like, to me, it feels like, I'm just speaking for myself, I feel like a little bit behind on some of that information as far as where a surplus like that might come from, and then how we can expect to use that in the conversation for future budgeting, if that makes sense. Just
I guess for me, I guess for me, is I don't know if are you looking to the city manager to answer that?
No,
or
I'm
just the
looking to
council?
you
Okay.
all because
I guess for me, we don't have a shortage of needs to be met in the community. During 2020, we know what happened in our community. We don't know what the future hold, and I think we'll always have more than enough needs to try to meet, and to have that, cushion, should we say? I think it's prudent for the city to do that.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, I've got what I think are the most current numbers on that fiscal year 25 transfer. Sorry, I didn't have everything pulled up, but a large percentage, the largest percentage of that surplus isn't wages saved. It's actually interest that we made on our cash reserves. So as interest rates have climbed up, we haven't adjusted those revenue line items to reflect that, and we're getting more on those CDs and money market accounts. And that was, it looks like over $2 million of that surplus. Was directly related to interest. And those interest rates are dropping, as we know, so those numbers will come back down. But that was the single largest percentage. So you add that, and then we didn't spend any of our contingency. Remember, we budget 0.75% for contingency. We didn't spend that. And we also had a fifth fire station. Remember, we were planning for the fifth fire station, so we had $700,000 in contingency working towards that goal that also didn't get spent. So right off the bat, we've got probably close to $3.5 million. I'm kind of speaking loosely on the information that I have from just interest income and contingency not spent. That won't happen every year. This budget that we're in right now, we took away that fire contingency, so that's gone. Some years we spend the contingency, other years we don't, and again, those interest rates will drop. So we don't necessarily expect that to be a recurring thing. You're right that wages play a role in that, but probably not as big as you might expect.
And-
Oftentimes when we have the unfilled positions like police officers, for example, or a firefighter's positions that don't get filled right away, some of that will get eaten up with overtime that other staff are putting in to cover for those expenses.
And I guess for me, it's just a question of trying to, not necessarily go back to the drawing board, but just get more creative about if we're going to need to come up with different revenue streams for certain projects or certain services that we offer, and just trying to leave no stone unturned for a potential to, well, actually, over the course of this many years, we've been not seeing those budgets spent, so could we use some of this money for something else, And so with the 35%, rate that you're talking about, I suppose, if that is a lower percentage, does that mean more money would go into emergency and facilities?
Correct. Yeah, so if we wanted to change and say 35% is too conservative, you could say that cap should be 30% or 25, and then you'd have flexibility to redirect that wherever you'd like, frankly. I mean, we set those policies, you all set those policies on where those funds are directed. Back in 2016, well, a little bit of history. First, the emergency reserve, that was set right after the 2013 property tax reform bill to give us some cushion in case there was a sudden loss of revenue. It was also with the 2008 flood still fresh in our mind that we could use an extra reserve to respond to those types of disasters. The facilities reserve really started to, that conversation came into play probably in 2017 or so as we started to forecast all of the facilities needs that we had and knowing how much of those might have to go to community referendum. We just decided to bank those dollars when we had some really good economic years when there was a lot of taxable value growth. So, but both of those things were decided at those respective moments in time, and this council could say, we no longer want to fund a facilities reserve, or we no longer want to fund an emergency reserve. We'd rather those dollars be redirected towards whatever. That's your discretion.
And to be clear, I don't have anything in mind. I just, like I said, getting us thinking about what we could potentially do in the future, like if we lower it to 33% and then still give the same amount that we would to, I think it's great that we have a facilities reserve. I think it's great that we have an emergency reserve. We should not get rid of those, in my humble opinion. But if we were to lower that percentage and we do the proper research and figure out that, actually looking at the data in the past, we think that this is a viable number, then we could look at other things like, and sometimes it's only a couple $100,000 that is a make or break for services. So I don't know. That's just something I've been thinking about. So thank you for all that really good information.
Is this the kind of information that you want, like the history of emergency reserves? Is that your question, Councilor Burgess? Do you just want like a broad? I'm actually very interested in municipal finance, and the work that group out there does is a mystery to me in a lot of times, and I try my best. So I don't know what the correct level for me, for us, and for the community is. But I'm interested in this, our work. So if that's maybe a future work session, I would be very interested in. Yeah. City manager and maybe finance department really getting into the nitty gritty.
Sure. So I think I would frame it as kind of a review of our reserve policies, and then we can give you some actual numbers on how those policies work based on how we're finishing each fiscal year. But those policies are in your budget document, one of those 800 and some pages in there, and we can simply kind of walk you through how we've looked at past surpluses and then transferred to those policies and where we think they kind of need to be in the future. Right now, I would say our priority is the facilities reserve fund. We've slowed down pumping money into the emergency reserve fund. I think that's at a pretty good level. And from a staff standpoint, the facilities reserve is absolutely the priority.
Okay, we talked about the general fund, kind of like surpluses. I just want to ask you about the enterprise department that will operate under enterprise funding. Is this like, it's fair to say they are like self-sufficient kind of, or sometimes do we get deficit, sometimes we get surplus? Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, they each have their own fiscal health, some healthier than others, and they can certainly have good years and bad years. So an example would be parking for, the 10 years prior to COVID that operated really well, and it had surpluses, which we built. We kept those in the parking fund, and they were intended to fund future facility repairs. And then COVID comes and nobody's parking downtown anymore, and we lose several $1 million in that fiscal year because of what was happening in the world. So yeah, there can be fluctuations like that. That's an extreme case, but each one's a little bit different in terms of its
But most of
financial
can
health.
call them healthy. We don't need to bull from, like, they are not deficit, we have to bull from the general fund to.
Yeah, I'd just say some are healthier than others. That's where we get into rate increases when we look at water and we look at sewer. If we feel like they're not as healthy as we need to be or not going to keep up with future needs, then we're recommending rate increases. The same would be for stormwater fund, for example. Others, like the airport runs on very, very thin margins. It's okay, but I would say, that's one that's very thin as opposed to wastewater, which would have quite a bit of reserves, given the nature of the operation. So pending list, put review of reserve policies on there, and is that what I'm hearing for folks? Sure.
And I think if we can talk about equipment too in that, because I think, hasn't that policy changed in the last probably decade as far as like how we accumulate money for equipment replacement and versus, I don't know.
Are you talking like fleet equipment or?
Office supplies.
I don't know. I was thinking like, did you say office supplies?
I think most of the reserves have
that's,
like a,
that's, a lot of offices. I mean, I wasn't being facetious.
Yeah.
and
I
most
guess I
of the
would-
reserves have a category associated with them.
Yeah, I was thinking like our heavier equipment. I thought and maybe I'm misremembering, but I thought there was some policy change where we are sort of like building in the capacity to replace equipment in public works and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would categorize that in the fleet. So I think we're talking the
Okay.
same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think the policy has changed, but we can review that. I don't recall any policy changes in the last 10 years. I don't think so.
Okay, I made that up.
But yeah, we can certainly look at how we do that.
And also if we can look how to do like affordable housing reserve, kind of, maybe be good.
Yeah, and I think I just want to stress that I don't necessarily know if I have an opinion one way or another about it. It's just like it's something that I've just always thought about in terms of how we budget, and I think we've talked about how if looking back and where we are as a city right now, I think us budgeting conservatively has done well for us. I think we're in a really good spot compared to a lot of neighbors.
And throughout the state.
And throughout the state, yeah. So, I don't know. Yeah.
And we have an abundance of joyous activities in our community. So I think we're very fortunate when we do step back and look at all the things that the city has done for the community. Anything else?
Anybody else have anything?
All right.
You look like you were about to say something.
Me? No. Or are you looking at him?
Josh.
I'm hard to read because I have
Yeah.
to mask.
Okay.
No, I just was, in response to Councilor's last comment about affordable housing, it could be helpful in that conversation about reserve funds to talk about the affordable housing reserve funds that are dedicated to specific districts, because those do have some very specific rules and just feels like it fits in that category of conversation.
I have one quick thing, and I'm sorry, everybody, but if there's one thing also that I've always thought is, and speaking about us, being very a city that's very responsible with our finances. Thank you to staff in our finance department. I think about, there's kind of like this building dread about what property taxes could do, what the federal government could do, about losing funding, losing grant opportunities, this, that, and the other thing. And, sometimes if you think in a microcosm, like, if a family's in a hard spot, sometimes you got to borrow more just for this time in an emergency. I would like to, I've always wanted to maybe have a discussion about exactly what our confines are when it comes to borrowing and bonding, and how much can we do until it impacts our Moody's AAA rating, what it would mean if we didn't have that Moody's AAA rating in terms of our projected financial loss and interest benefits, if that would be something that would be worth it, if we feel the need is there. Those are conversations I've always wanted to have.
Out of curiosity, it sounds, I mean, it sounds like there's a large project in your mind or something, right?
Not
Or maybe-
necessarily.
Could I mean, it sounds like to me that this could be a one-on-one conversation with staff, just to have a greater understanding.
Yes, and also just the reason I think it's germane is because just thinking about yes, it could start one-on-one with staff, but in the future, if we have to do something,
Because folks are, I mean, of course, if we have to do something, and certainly we would have to pay bills, right? At the end of the day, we know what the AAA bonding, that status really does mean for us, and I just think it might be a one-on-one conversation, personally, and then if you feel it's something you want to report on or share, certainly you can do that.
okay, I hear you. That's all.
All right, anything else? We're going to move on to item number 7, council updates on assigned boards, commissions, and committees.
Thanks to USG for an event,
Absolutely, that was a wonderful, yeah,
getting to meet residents of Iowa City.
yes. Enjoyed the questions and also the social
Yeah.
time after. It was great. And they were dressed to impress. Loved it. Yes. All right. Hearing nothing else, we are adjourned from our work session, and we will begin promptly at 6 p.m. for our formal meeting.